How's it going, guys? Dragonstar Production here, back with another What If video, and in this edition of Dragon Ball What If, we're going to be continuing part 3 of What If Dragonstar was in Dragon Ball. And because it's been so long, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and it's worth the wait. With that said, let's get into the video intro. Alright, so last time we left off with myself and Goku actually approaching Korin's tower. That way we could train and also drink the Ultra Divine Water. However, also at this time, Tenshinhan is actually learning the Mafuba from Master Roshi. But he isn't actually the only one learning it. In fact, Yamcha and Krillin both are at Roshi's learning this technique as well. Meaning that now 4 people are going to be able to perform this technique on King Piccolo if they need to. And I'm gonna say, with Tenshinhan, Krillin, and Yamcha all working on the technique together, I believe it's very possible that they'll get the attack down much faster than me and Goku will actually be able to climb Korin's tower and get all of our training done, as well as obtaining the Ultra Divine Water. And knowing Tenshinhan, he isn't going to want to stay back. He plans on acting on his plan, and he's going to seal King Piccolo. Tenshinhan also manages to convince both Yamcha and Krillin to come along and aid him against Piccolo. But we won't get into that just yet. Instead, we'll get into some good old tower climbing with me and Goku. Me and Goku clearly had to make it a race to the top. This would make it a lot funner for both of us, but it would also push both of us to actually climb the tower much faster. When we climbed up to the top of the tower though, we were met by Krillin, but also a new face, Yajirobe. The meeting was pretty basic, pretty casual, nothing special, but me just being there, I managed to keep some senzu beans out of the hands of Yajirobe, at least until me and Goku were able to drink the water. This obviously was a rough feeling. It felt like I swallowed a rock in my stomach, and it felt like it was then ripping. It was some serious pain, but I knew I had to survive it. So over the night, I adapted and fought through the pain until Goku finally awakened, completely re-energized and ready to go. But as me and Goku woke up, he was already sensed our friends that were in trouble, knowing that we had no time to waste. Me and Goku grabbed up the bag of senzu beans, and no lie, we jumped off the tower so fast. Luckily though for me and Goku, he happened to have his power pole, so we were able to use that as a zip line, reaching the ground, as we was then able to sprint towards the others. However, speaking of the others, let's talk about them now. Tenshinhan, Krillin, Yamcha, Roshi, and even Chiaotzu all showed up at King Castle to fight King Piccolo. They all knew the best way to fight would be in numbers, so they decided that would be the best plan for them because they've already been outclassed before, and the last thing they needed was for history to repeat itself once again. So with that said, once they arrive, Tenshinhan would be the first to dash in at King Piccolo, but before he reaches him, he stops and he puts his fingers on his head, releasing a solar flare that actually blinds King Piccolo for a small bit. Yes, this was small, but it gave Yamcha the opportunity to actually nail a Wolfang Fist directly into Piccolo's back early on into this fight. However, they thought this would do damage. It doesn't. King Piccolo was barely dazed by this. It more pissed him off than anything. So King Piccolo would then decide to engage in the fight as well, but he wouldn't go for the weakest of the bunch. No, he's gonna go for Krillin because he's just standing over there not doing anything. Krillin though was prepared and wasn't scared at all, and neither was Master Roshi, who was standing right next to him. Krillin and Roshi decided that the best thing for them would actually be to fight together, and this was for good reason because King Piccolo came rushing in at them, and I say with little ease, he clotheslined both of them to the ground, causing a crater, as he would then reach his hand down and grab Krillin by his little bald head, as he then gets hit by Master Roshi directly in the back, as then Piccolo turns to Roshi, ready to kill him for even dare touching him. But this is when Tenshinhan actually had the perfect opportunity to seal King Piccolo using the evil containment wave. However, when Tenshinhan throws the rice cooker down and charges the attack, King Piccolo actually sees this coming, so he quickly grabs Roshi and throws him in front of the way and gets sealed up actually from the evil containment wave. King Piccolo, after seeing this technique though, he loses his cool. He wastes no time in then giving the Tenshinhan a beating that he feels that he deserves. He darts into the sky, kicking him right across the jaw. Then he just to catch him in his arms to throw him right back to the ground. King Piccolo then powered up a ball inside of his hands and shot it towards Tenshinhan, who was helpless. However, Yamcha attempted to move Tenshinhan out of the way, and he was successful in doing that, but Yamcha wasn't able to get out himself. So Yamcha was actually engulfed in the blast. And this is actually when I arrive. As the smoke cleared, nothing was left but a bit of Yamcha's gi. And when I saw this, I couldn't help but be enraged. I was getting madder by the second. More and more anger was boiling inside of me until I just screamed out, "You'll pay for this!" And as I dashed towards King Piccolo, I watched him put his guard up, putting his arms trying to block my attack. But I stayed on my toes and slipped under him and uppercutted him right across the jaw, causing him to go crashing backwards. And I knew he wasn't expecting me to go in for another attack, so I sped myself up and went for just that. This time, though, I had a finish in mind. I dove towards King Piccolo's head with my knee, as he then crashed into it. I felt his skull begin to cave across my knee, but this wasn't going to be enough to end the fight. King Piccolo was stronger than that, so I continued to repeatedly drive my knee into his head. Each hit, I heard a crack. Knowing that King Piccolo was defenseless, I stopped back, leaving him right there as I started to charge up a blast in the palm of my hands. "You've caused enough damage, King Piccolo. Enough pain, enough suffrage for more than 1 decade. And it ends now. You deserve to suffer, and I'm gonna put you out of your misery. Only because I want to." And as those words came out of his mouth, I released the Kamehameha directly at Piccolo, knowing that he would spit out his revenge egg, Piccolo Jr., before getting evaporated inside the Kamehameha. King Piccolo couldn't do a thing, but I could. And what does this mean? Well, I watched the direction of where the egg landed, and I had the intentions to actually go and get the egg. I arrive in the woods and I stay a couple nights waiting for any signs of the egg actually hatching, or even Piccolo Jr. himself, until finally I found him. And right on sight, Piccolo Jr. tried to attack me, but I avoided it and I simply kicked him straight in the head, knocking him out. This process continued actually for a good bit until finally Piccolo Jr. gave up and started looking at me a little differently each day. He started to accept me slowly and slowly, and I actually started to train him, and he grew stronger at a much quicker rate. And of course, I wasn't going to teach him anything of the Kami school, but I did plan on helping Piccolo Jr. develop his attacks faster, similarly the way I did Yamcha and Krillin earlier on in the story. But let me point out that I'm not going to show him any ideas about the special beam cannon, probably because part of me feels like the little guy probably has some hate towards me in there, so he'd probably kill me. But on another note, he was able to get some more offense when it came time to the tournament. And I was getting a lot stronger as well too, and hopefully enough to keep up with Goku, like in canon, who is still training up at Kami's Lookout. And the reason, like I said, that I didn't want to train with Kami's Lookout is, well, I know I can do it another time, and also, this ain't what if Damon was in Dragon Ball. Anyway, with that being said, it is now time for the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament. And I actually decided not to meet up with the gang before because, well, I was almost late. That wasn't intentional, but I had to bring somebody along. And when I arrived, like I said, I didn't arrive alone. I arrived with Piccolo Jr., who planted ground right next to me. And oh yeah, did I mention I can fly now? Yeah. Anywho, everybody was in awe at Piccolo Jr., but I simply just signed both of our names up for the tournament and let the group mumble and talk about what they were going to say, because I've been doing what I've been doing with Piccolo Jr. for so long now, and I think he's actually maybe even made an earlier turnaround than what he does in canon. Krillin and Yamcha, though, had their doubts, thinking that maybe Piccolo Jr. had corrupted me, but Tenshinhan and Goku had different thoughts. They thought maybe I was trying to influence Piccolo Jr. to become a better person and not like his father, and that's actually exactly what I was doing. This tournament was just a test to see if it actually worked over this time that we've been together. However, before I get into the tournament, we have to cover the preliminaries, because I actually have a big match in the preliminaries because I'm replacing Yajirobe in the tournament. This means that I will be having a match against Hero. So in other words, I'm fighting against Kami, the Guardian of Earth. This, though, surprisingly leans in my favor by a good amount. I find myself being able to dodge and weave all of Hero's attacks, and he actually doesn't even lay a finger on me. I was simply tripped out by this, and I actually was able to easily knock him out for a ring out victory. I was shocked, and in fact, I was shook. I was expecting this to happen, but nowhere near this easy. But as I turned over, I actually seen Hero, and he winked back at me. And I quickly had a million things run through my head. I had no idea what he was thinking, if he knew what happened with me and King Piccolo, or if he knew what happened with me and Piccolo Jr. However, I also thought that maybe he knew that I wasn't from this place. I couldn't really focus on that right now, though. I had the rest of the matches to worry about in this tournament. Not going to lie, I kind of want to win it. So with that said, let's get into the first match of this tournament, that being Tenshinhan versus Cyborg Tao. This fight actually goes as canon, so I'm not going to discuss it here, so Tenshinhan wins. Round 1, match 2 is going to be Goku versus Yamcha. And this fight goes, well, there's going to be a good bit of changes, mainly because Yamcha isn't fighting Piccolo and Goku isn't fighting Chi-Chi. That doesn't mean that Goku and Yamcha don't put up a hella good show, because both are stronger, but we all know that Goku has the upper hand against Yamcha here, so Goku is going to defeat Yamcha, moving on to the next round. However, when Goku leaves the arena, he is also met by Chi-Chi, and eventually the two will discuss, and like in canon, they end up getting engaged like they do before. And as for Chi-Chi, she would then actually fight in the next match against Goku's best friend, and she would want to impress him very much so in fighting against Krillin. And as I said, match 3, Krillin versus Chi-Chi. Krillin and Chi-Chi would both get into their fighting stances when Chi-Chi would be the first to jump in, dashing at Krillin. Krillin is actually taken aback by how strong Chi-Chi was, not expecting her to be as quick and powerful as she was. Krillin, though, regroups very fast as he then starts to fight back. And surprisingly, the two are a lot closer in power than what everybody thought. But the longer it dragged out, the more it leaned in Krillin's favor. This was because Krillin had more experience, so his endurance would be much higher than Chi-Chi's, which leads him to actually knocking Chi-Chi out of the ring, making Krillin move on to round 2. And as for the match that we've been waiting for, round 1, match 4, Dragonstar versus Piccolo Jr. And finally, the match that we've been waiting for, Dragonstar versus Piccolo Jr. And I can say as a fan here, I was starstruck. And that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I've been training him or nothing. This was the first real fight that I was going to have with Piccolo Jr. And I needed to get my head in the game, especially because I had a lot to do with the death of his father. And who knew if Piccolo Jr. still had some resentment towards me. I mean, I would. And Piccolo Jr. does seem like the guy to kind of hold grudges, especially around this time. And plus, I'm not the nicest guy to be around, let's just be honest. So who knew if I wore off on him that much. And with that being said, Piccolo Jr. actually does use that anger that he had inside of him that he releases as soon as the tournament begins. He charges at me as he screams that I killed his father, using that anger, and he lunges at me. And I attempt to dodge, but I couldn't. His forearm crashes against my face as I then nail the ground. However, I didn't stay on the ground. Instead, I returned the favor, getting back up and nailing a forearm of my own. Me and Piccolo would then trade blows back and forth until I finally decide to break the cycle by spinning my leg up and catching Piccolo right across the jaw, though he regains his footing and uses his stretch arms to actually push me back off of him. And as soon as my feet begin to slide, I roll off of his, and I actually use this to come flying with a kick. This actually catches him direct contact with his chest, causing him to cough up. But the fight only began here, because then Piccolo proceeded to take off his weighted clothing as his power level would then skyrocket. Seeing this, I had no choice but to do the same, and when the weights came off, I can say the fight truly began. The fist gets harder, the kicks get heavier, and the ki blasts begin to come to play. This fight was unlike any of the others. This fight wasn't going to be clear at all. Piccolo and myself were pretty closely matched. In fact, I would even say that we were right on par with each other. Piccolo edged me out on techniques, but one thing that I had on him was the fact that I knew his techniques from both watching the show and training with him. So I was able to dodge some of his key attacks, like the Demon Explosive Wave, just by knowing his hand gestures before he does them. As a matter of fact, as soon as I saw his hands actually combine together, I dashed around the ring using the multi-form technique, throwing Piccolo off guard for just a single second. But it was only a single second that I needed. I ended up right behind Piccolo as I then would bear hug him just to slam him on the ground, German suplex style, as I repeatedly do it over and over and over, nailing him on the ground. Piccolo was on defense and he was doing pretty well. However, in this fight, well isn't good enough. I speed rush Piccolo, catching him right across his temple, but Piccolo returns the favor after he goes flying by using his stretch arms once more in this fight by driving his fist directly into my gut. But still, neither of us was backing down. No matter how hard this fight gets, we both keep pushing and getting more and more angry as it goes along, because both of us want to win, and I think he kind of wants to kill me. Until finally, and I mean finally, this fight actually gets an opening for one of us to win it. Piccolo at this point starts to grow into a giant, but little did Piccolo know that this was actually the moment that I've been waiting for, thinking that he would pull it out of his bag a lot sooner. Piccolo, being the giant, only gains one thing, and that is range. He loses his speed, and he gains nothing in power, which I use to my advantage. I first let Piccolo attempt to throw some blows, but I easily weave his punches until sliding between his legs as I then power a Kamehameha in my palm. Piccolo turns around just to have his stomach get completely eaten out by the blast. The blast actually goes directly through Piccolo Jr.'s stomach, and it actually causes a hole right in the middle, very similar to his fate of his father in canon. However, this doesn't kill Piccolo Jr., instead he crashes back down to his base form, and at this time I knew the fight was over. I was flying into the sky when he stood back up, and when he did, I came flying down with a full power Dragon Fist! Yep, we went there. But before I get into the damage of the rest of the tournament and the damage of what this attack did, I'm going to end this video here, but that does mean part 4 is ending the Piccolo Jr. saga and the start of the Saiyan saga. So if you guys want to see that, be sure to like this video, and like I said, a like goal of 500. I'll catch you guys in my Discord, or I'll catch you guys on my Twitter. With that being said, Dragonstar Productions is out.
Congratulations, champ. You made it to the end of the video. Now, if you hit that subscription button, that thumbs up button, and that bell icon, you won't catch a dynamite kick.